Welcome to the Disability Approval Path.
Welcome to Social Security and Disability, the Approval Path with Ms. Deborah Spector, lead attorney and managing partner at Spector Lens. With over 40 years of experience, Deborah has dedicated her legal career to representing Social Security and SSI claimants through every stage of the disability process, from initial applications to federal court appeals. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're diving into some of the most common and most confusing terms in disability law: SSI, SSDI, DAC, Medicare, and Medicaid. What do they all mean, and how do you know which one applies to you? This is episode 1. What's the difference between SSI, SSDI, DAC, Medicare, and Medicaid? Welcome, Ms. Deborah.
Thank you.
All right, let's get right to it. Can you talk to us a little bit about your journey and kind of what drew you into disability law?
Sure. So I started practicing in 1977. I've been doing this a long time. And I started as a legal aid lawyer in the Chicago area. Absolutely fell in love with what we call, this is the technical nerdy part. I fell in love with what we call administrative law. And that's when you deal with a body of administrative regulations. You appear before administrative bodies and forums rather than, for example, at the local courthouse in Chicago. And in particular, I really loved Social Security. It's a rule-based system with then boatloads of interpretation. So I came into it through legal aid. And, as anyone who does this kind of work will tell you, it's very gratifying work. We work one-on-one with individuals who are attempting to gain their rights from the federal government, attempting to gain monetary benefits they've either paid for or are otherwise entitled to. And when we're successful, we hope that what we help our clients achieve is some safety, a better measure of dignity because there's regular income, and security in knowing what the next month is going to bring. So I fell into it in legal aid. I went into private practice many years ago. And quick aside, the beginning of my private practice coincided, it was 1981, with a massive termination of benefits throughout the country. And because I knew how to do this kind of work, I ended up developing a very big practice in what we call termination cases, in which people who are getting benefits get notices terminating them. And I developed the practice from there, stopped doing any other kind of work. Occasionally, our firm will pick something else up, like a union disability plan or another kind of governmental disability plan. But by and large, our work is with the Social Security Administration, both adjudicating claims within the administration and suing the administration if we're not successful.
Wow. So you've been doing this since the 70s, you said. What has kept you motivated doing this? Is it just the love of the game, or is there something else that kept you in this long?
Well, part of it's the love of the game. Part of it is the fact that this is a sustainable kind of practice because we have a never-ending stream of potential clients, and we can usually help, not always, but often. Even if we can't help, we pride ourselves in explaining things to people so that even if the conclusion is, I don't think I can help you, I don't think you're eligible, that's my opinion, at least we've served to demystify some of what's going on because this is a complex program with many different levels of adjudication. The other thing that's kept me going personally is my colleagues. So over the years, our firm has grown. At one point, with my late partner, we also handled workers' compensation claims for longshoremen, which is a completely different field. And now, though, we're concentrating in Social Security. And over the years, other lawyers have joined me, and we have a support staff of about 6 people and a total of 5 lawyers now. And managing the office, running the business, mentoring the other lawyers, supervising everything, and editing has become a whole new career for me. And so I'm completely jazzed about continuing to go. It's also, fun is not the word to describe this because we're dealing with people's income in their lives.
Absolutely.
But it's day to day, it's exciting, and we're in the flow.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Ms. Deborah, what is SS? What's the difference between the SSI and SSDI? For goodness sakes, can you please let us know?
Oh, for goodness sake, Evan. Okay, so here's what I tell a new client. I say, look, Social Security is nothing but a giant insurance plan that happens to be run by the federal government. It's just like Unum, State Farm, Hartford, any of them, MetLife. And we contribute to the plan. We pay our premiums through payroll taxes. Somebody has to pay the payroll tax. We call that person the wage earner. If you're lucky and you pay your taxes all your life, well, at least 10 years, and you'll make it until retirement and then be able to pull out the retirement insurance. Some of us, however, become disabled and have to pull out the disability insurance before retirement age. And some people sadly die young, leave kids, leave widows or widowers taking care of the kids, and they pull out what are called survivors benefits. So that's an insurance plan, and you're entitled to it. You pay for it. And there are a few other programs, which I'll explain, but that includes the Disabled Widow Program, the Disabled Adult Child Program. Some people don't pay into the Social Security system for a variety of reasons. They could be stay-at-home moms. They could be people because of mental health problems who've never worked at all and never paid their premiums. There could be people who've paid their premiums, but their benefit rate would be very, very low. These folks are also potentially entitled to a program we call SSI, Supplemental Security Income. Started in the 70s to make sure that across the country there would be a bare minimum income for the elderly, blind, and disabled. SSI is run by Social Security. It goes right through the same system, and many of the standards and processes are identical, but the difference is that the funding comes out of general tax revenue, not out of the Social Security Trust Fund, which theoretically is where our Social Security benefits come from. And SSI, this is important to remember, is a welfare program. Just like SNAP, food stamps, or Medicaid, it's a welfare program, which means that it's means tested. So eligibility depends on income and assets, as well as disability or age or blindness. One of the big differences in the programs is that young children from birth, disabled children in low-income families, can get SSI benefits. Disabled children in middle-class families cannot get benefits unless and until a parent dies, retires, or becomes disabled. So the important distinction is that one program is insurance, something we pay for through our taxes, payroll tax deductions, and the other program is welfare, and it's means tested. Both programs provide benefits to disabled people.
Do you know the kind of any criteria as far as families with like a kid with special needs that needs Social Security or anything like that? Do you know how can you get a little bit into that, kind of break that down, and
You
how
bet.
that's kind of
Well,
possible?
remember that the SSDI program only kicks into gear when the wage earner becomes disabled or dies, right? So the children in that family are not eligible for benefits under Social Security, but special needs kids in a low income family are eligible potentially for SSI, Supplemental Security Income, the welfare component. Now, those kids need to be in families that have low income and low assets. The asset requirement for a family in SSI is $3,000 maximum, for an individual, $2,000 maximum. So for a special needs kid, and we represent a lot of special needs kids, they are only in low income families, not in middle class families.
The doggy? The doggy come in?
I got it. Okay, we'll go back. You know what else? I misspoke about the 2040 quarters, and then I went back and covered it.
So, Ms. Deborah, who qualifies for SSDI, and how is it connected to a person's personal work history?
Great question. So, to get retirement benefits, you have to work at least 40 quarters during your lifetime. And a quarter of coverage is earned by paying tax on a certain amount every quarter. It changes year to year. That's 10 years over your lifetime. But for disability, you have to have worked 20 of those quarters, which for most people is 5 years, 20 quarters out of the 40 quarters before you become disabled. What that translates to is 5 out of the last 10 years before you become disabled. So there has to be not only a threshold contribution to the system, but a recent contribution to the system. It's pretty generous. It's 5 out of the last 10 years, but it has to be met to qualify for SSDI, for the insurance portion of the program. Now, if a wage earner meets those requirements and becomes disabled, then we look at the disability analysis. If the wage earner is deceased, then we look at survivor's benefits. SSI is different because it's a welfare program, as I explained, with the money coming out of general revenue. And so SSI is available for people who either don't meet those contribution requirements. We call them not insured, and we're not talking health insurance. We're talking Social Security disability insurance. Either they don't meet the threshold requirements, or their benefit rate would be so low that they're entitled to a supplement, that they're otherwise living in poverty. Now, the benefit rate a person gets varies according to what he or she contributes in payroll taxes. So, Evan, your benefit rate and mine might be quite different depending on how much we pay taxes on over our lifetimes, when we worked, when we didn't work. The earnings are indexed for inflation. So there is an attempt made, a good one, by the government to translate our earnings with an inflation index so that older workers, like me, are not penalized because we paid taxes years ago when the cost of living was quite different and our incomes were very low. But basically, we call it your personal primary insurance amount, rather. Your primary insurance amount, that's your personal SSA benefit rate, is based on how much you put into the system. SSI, on the other hand, the welfare program, has a standard maximum. For the year 2025, it's $967. From that, the government, that's the most you can get in SSI. And from that, the government deducts other income you receive. Not dollar for dollar. There are some considerations that go into play. There's some disregards. You get an incentive if your income's coming from work. But basically, an individual who gets SSI of any kind can't get more than $967 plus a $20 disregard. So we're talking about less than $1,000 a month for SSI recipients.
You deal with a whole bunch of acronyms, Miss Deborah. So can we? So what is?
You bet.
What is
acronyms are my life? Come on.
What does DAC stand for, and who typically qualifies for these benefits?
This is my favorite program, Evan. I love the DAC, the DAC program. It stands for Disabled Adult Child. Actually, Social Security a few years ago stopped calling it that, and they call it Child Disability Benefits. But Disabled Adult Child describes what it is. A disabled adult child is an individual, an adult, who has a disability that began before the age of 22, has never married, has never really worked over a certain dollar amount, and who has a parent who is either deceased, disabled, or retired. That young adult, or it could be adult in middle age, is entitled to pull on benefits based on the parent's earnings record. So if you have a wage earner mom or dad, worked all of his or her life, is now retiring, and has a kid at home who's never really launched, let's say perhaps autism spectrum disorder, let's say a physical disability and might be on a feeding tube, something like that. Well, that child can collect benefits based on the parent's earnings, even though the child never worked. Now remember, the kid can never marry, a couple of exceptions, but can't be married unless to another recipient, and can't have really had intervening work activity. But that kid, it's a great program, can pull on the parents' contributions to the system. Now you can see the problem in identifying who these people are, right? They're out in the community, And so I kind of think of myself as a little bit of an evangelist, telling people about this program. If you know a kid down the street who can't work, living with the parents, or maybe not, and now you know that mom is about to retire, that kid could be eligible for a Social Security benefit. It's really important for the public to know this, but also for caseworkers, social workers, nurses to help us identify who these claimants might be. Now, usually when a person applies for benefits for retirement, let's say, one of the questions on the form is, do you have a child who became disabled before the age of 22? And that's how Social Security tries to scoop up the clients. But sometimes we just find them in the community. Could I turn to what it means to be disabled?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Social Security goes through something we call a sequential evaluation to decide if a person is disabled. It's a little bit different for children, but same thing. There's an evaluation process. I'll do adults. For adults, it's like a decision tree in logic in high school or college. And there are 5 steps. Question 1 is, are you working? If you're working, you're not disabled. Period, the end. Disability doesn't mean injured, ill. It means unable to work because of a medically determinable impairment. If you're working over a certain amount, and in 2025, that amount is $1,620 a month gross. That's the bright line for what it means to be working. If you're making more than that, you can't go on to step 2. Now, as lawyers, there are a lot of things we can do at step 1. We can disregard certain income. We can, but basically, if you're making more than about $1,600 a month, you're not disabled. You might be impaired, ill, but you're not disabled. If you get past step 1, I think you have a question.
I'm sorry to cut you off. No, sorry to cut you off. It's interesting because my brother's special needs has been special needs since the day he was born. And my mother has always been going through this process for so much. And my brother has a job, but it's not like he can earn what you're saying he can earn. And he was always kind of going back and forth with people with SSI and stuff like disability, because my brother clearly needs, kind of assistance, even though he's in his 30s now. It's just been, I don't know, it's just been interesting to see what my mom has been going through since my entire life, you know what I mean? And kind of fighting with ways to get my brother benefits and opportunities to be able to take care of himself.
You bet. And it's a mountain of paperwork.
Yeah.
Right. But if your mom or if your mom or your dad is now retired or disabled, or I hope not deceased, then your brother, if he didn't work and didn't marry, should look into whether or not disabled adult child is available. But if he did work, there's something else to look at. We have a lot of people in the Chicago area. We have a great food chain that employs a lot of people with borderline intelligence and spectrum disorders to work. It's Albertsons, the Jewel. They're fabulous, and they employ people all the time. Well, over time, those workers accrue enough quarters of coverage to get their own disability insurance. So that's something else to take a look at. I always have people go online to www.ssa.gov and hit the little button for my account and look at your earnings record. See what you might be eligible for, how many quarters you really do have. It's done by year, but we can figure it out. And that's a first step to figuring out what you might be entitled to. Yeah, but you're describing very common problem. And then the mother, the parent, is buried in paperwork for the rest of her life, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So Ms. Deborah, if someone's unsure which program applies to them, what's the first step you recommend they take? Is it that website or is it something else?
First thing you do is go online, open up what's called My Account, and it will tell you what you might be eligible for. It won't tell you about DAC, but it will tell you if you work until you're 67, this is what you'll get. If you retire at 62, this is what you'll get. If you defer taking retirement till you're 70, this is what your benefit will be. And for my purposes, it will also say you do or don't have enough quarters for disability. And if you are found disabled, this is the amount you'll get. That's really important. And if it says you're not eligible, you don't have enough quarters for disability, bing, 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 That's our clue to look at SSI. Now, after 47 years of doing this, if somebody calls me, I can figure that out in like a minute and a half. But generally, that's where you would start. I want to go back to the 5 steps, though, Evan. So, question 1, are you working? Question 2, do you have a severe problem? Can you prove it? Do you have a severe impairment? And severe doesn't mean disabling. It just means, is there something going on with your body or your mind, or a combination, that can be medically determined, that can be signed off on by medical professionals? Question 3, is your problem or any of your problems found on a list of things that Social Security considers disabling? Per se, no other questions, right? Classic example is, unfortunately, the terminal illnesses, the loss of 2 limbs. Social Security will say, okay, you lost 2 limbs, you're disabled, no further questions, as long as you're not working. Question 4, though, because most people don't meet that list. Question 4 is when the government says, all right, we're going to look at everything going on with you. What is your residual capacity? Given all of these cards you've been dealt, what can you still do? And how does that compare to past work you've done? If it matches up, if your residual capacity matches up to your past work, the claim is denied. You're not disabled. However, if you can prove you can't do your past work, let's say it required unloading a truck and you have a torn rotator cuff that despite surgery doesn't let you lift more than 15 or 20 pounds, then we go to question 5. Question 5 is where lawyers who do this kind of work do most of our work. Question 5 is this: if you can't do your past work, is there any other work out there in the national economy you can do? And that's where the tussle comes in with the government, because they have charts and graphs and vocational experts, and they say, yeah, there are a gazillion things a person can do. But if we can prove that those are not available for one reason or another, maybe because of your age, your skill level, then you're entitled to an allowance. There's always a 6th question, though, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, and that's substance abuse. So if the government determines that your disability is related to a substance abuse disorder, be it alcohol, street drugs, abuse of prescription drugs, opioid dependence, whatever, then we go into a but-for test. That means, but for the substance abuse, would you still be disabled? And that's the analytical framework. It's used for Social Security disability insurance. It's also used for SSI disability. One other thing I should mention at this point: SSI is available to disabled people from birth if they're low income and low asset. It's also available to people over 65 and to people who are legally blind and of any age.
Ms. Deborah, thank you so much for the information and your time.
You bet. It's been a great pleasure, Evan. I hope I didn't give you too much.
Oh, no, listen, this is what we're here for.
Okay, I've been doing this a long time. I have plenty more.
Thank you all for joining us at home for the first episode of Social Security Disability, the Approval Path with Ms. Deborah Spector. If you're feeling overwhelmed by disability benefits, connect with Deborah at spectorandlens.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share the episode with someone who really might need this information. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Evan. Pleasure being with you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.